Melissa Miller. I'm a science writer. I live in San Diego, and I really love overthinking things. I'm also the co-boss of Nerd Night San Diego, so if you're ever down there, look us up. This last summer, I decided to do a rewatch of the Fast and the Furious movies, which I do every couple of years, specifically with STEM topics in mind. And I got together with my friend Lisa, who's an astrophysicist down in San Diego, and we interviewed a whole bunch of STEM professionals, and then just rewatched the movies and thought about how bizarre the physics are. So there's some basic questions here in the Fast and Furious movies. Hopefully everyone's seen them, or at least kind of has an idea about just how escalatingly bizarre they've gotten. Really my first and main question is just how good at math is Dominic Toretto. He is basically a savant. If you watch the movies, you'll notice he has this math face, right? So he'll just stop for a minute, and then you can tell that he is going to get us all out of this really life-threatening situation with math. So in movie 4, this is just one example. Sure, Dominic Toretto knows how tall his car is and how fast it can accelerate, but how could he possibly drive underneath a tanker full of gas that is rolling down a hill and manage to get right under that car and save him and Letty's life? Think of all of the things he would have to calculate in a couple of seconds, right? How fast is that coming down the hill? How much gas is even in there? What rate is it burning off? Are there any potholes on the street? Was he paying attention to all those sorts of things? And yet, that 1 second of thought, and he times it just right, saves his life, no problem. Since this is an After Dark panel, I figured I could ask this question of just how hard is Dominic Toretto. Movie 6 has the most ridiculous stunt. If you consider that they live on planet Earth and have to obey the laws of physics, as we mere mortals do, this scene is completely impossible, of course. So if you haven't seen the movie, there's this dual bridge, they're far apart. He's on one side. He crashes his car into the barrier so that it will launch him out the door, jumping through the air to catch his lady love, who has just been launched off the top of a tank that is on the other roadway that ran over a car, and so it flipped. He catches her in midair. They continue on his trajectory, interestingly, and lands on a car windshield. And everyone's fine, not even the dribble of blood out of the mouth or anything like that. So he is at once both as hard and as soft as you need him to be. We interviewed a medical professional who termed it the Dom paradox. So he is hard enough to break the windshield, break the fall without breaking, his entire body, and yet soft enough to cradle Letty so that she also gets no injuries. And this happens throughout the movies, right? He gets shot, no problem. All those sorts of things. So yes, she's a lucky lady. Dom is pretty hard. So in movie 7, we asked the question a few times, can cars fly? Obviously the answer to this is no. But in this scene in Dubai, they are jumping out of this is not plan A in this particular case. They have to get the chip out of the car, and there's 3 skyscrapers, and they drive out of one, into the second one, across that, and then into the third one. So no, cars cannot fly, it would just fall. But in this scene, in the first jump, maybe because Jason Statham, you see this explosion behind him, Jason Statham, who is currently a bad guy in movie 7, shoots a grenade launcher, and the grenade explodes right behind the car. So the car's starting to fall, the grenade goes off, little bit more force, just enough, right, to get him to that second building. Maybe not so much. Later in the same movie, they asked the question again. And what I loved about doing the research for this is I found out just how much of Fast and Furious is done practically. This is a legitimate shot. They dropped cars, not with people in them, that's the only thing in VFX in this shot. They dropped these cars out of a huge plane and took video of it. Those same cars were not the ones that landed on the road and drove away, right? You have 3 at least of every single car. This is one car. Now it's totaled. You have another car that they drop from just about 10 feet over the road, and it lands. That car also totaled. You cannot do that to cars and have them drive away. And then the third car is the one that drives away. So learning about all of the practical effects they did really is kind of amazing. They also, my favorite part of this sequence though is Roman pumping the brakes on the way down. That definitely doesn't do anything, that's just a tick. But I would too. So here's a shot from behind the scenes of the cameraman jumping out of the plane as a car literally rolls out of a plane, and they got some amazing shots. Beautiful movie, by the way. Okay, how many people have they killed? The kill count of the Toretto extended family, quite high. what's interesting is that movies 1 through 4, they're shooting people are dying, no problem. By movie 5, I don't know, they decided they needed to make it so that the Toretto family never kills anybody. And so they started putting these news reports in, like Kurt Hapley here, you might recognize, saying, well, this thing happened, but don't worry, no casualties. Amazingly, no casualties. Again, we asked the medical doctor, no, this prison bus flipped 20 times. It is a rock tumbler of amputated hands and feet. That is what is in there. Dominic Toretto is not alive. None of the other prisoners are alive. Yeah, so kill count, however many people were on that bus, right away, movie 5. My favorite stunt in all of the movies, the bank vault scene in Fast 5. Amazingly, again, the practical shots, you can see the wires here between the cars and the bank vault. That's the only VFX in this shot. What they did, because that's the fail point, right? Like, those wires wouldn't hold up to this. The hooks on the wires wouldn't hold up to this. However, what they did was they drove that bank vault. That bank vault is also a car, which I'll show you. But they just drove around. But again, at the end of this, there's a news sequence. No one was killed when a bank vault was driven around the street for bull. So many people are dead. So many people are dead. They're maimed. It's bad news. But yeah, just for cool, this is a truck inside of a bank vault. They just drove around 20 feet or whatever behind the other cars. Very cool behind the scenes video if you can find it. Okay. Again, don't worry. No one was killed, guys. No one was killed. Yes, they were. But this one I actually feel counts towards them as opposed to against them, because Jason Momoa did this, right? And one of the few times you hear math happen out loud is in Fast X, when they decide they need to get this bomb into the water. Because if a bomb explodes underwater, the blast will be lessened than if a bomb explodes while rolling down the streets of Rome. So they actually save people in this one, so it sort of counts for them. Okay, so.
Yes.
Amazingly, Bob Ekfordozzi, who you might know as the Mohawk guy at NASA, answered my questions about Fast 9, about can you launch a Pontiac Fiero into space? And his response to this question, he loves these movies, loves the sequence, is that maybe the writer's room, like in the hallway outside the writer's room, was a poster about a space launch. He called it the LaCroix, basically, of science, where it's like someone had maybe once seen a space launch. Because, in fact, we did used to launch rockets from planes, and that's what they do in F9. These boosters, these engines, all this kind of looks space launchy, and he was actually like, yeah, if they put some time and some effort into all of that, like that sort of checks out. It could have happened. We did weirder things, right? Like back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, than launch a Pontiac Fiero into space, it turns out. There's these boosters of air, like like sure, okay, that's a thing. What's interesting too is inside the car they have it rigged up so that Roman is using the gear shifter, he's using the pedals, he's using the steering wheel, and again, Bobek said, we do weirder things with game controllers. These things can be rigged up. It would take a lot of time, and it wouldn't make sense if you're sending a non-pilot into space to not have them just have buttons and switches, right? A driver's used to a car. So again, we've done weirder things. The real question, it turns out, is how the heck did they get back? So, what was their plan? How were they going to get back? What they do in the movie is find the ISS, which is like not a thing, right? Space is big, you can't just like roll up to the ISS. The ISS doesn't just like let randos in. But apparently they do. And the thing that I actually like about this is the movie doesn't tell you. It didn't even try. Cut to barbecue, they're drinking Coronas, right? Like don't try to answer it. But yeah, so there is some sort of vehicle at the ISS, like an evacuation vehicle for however many people are on it at the time. So maybe they just saved the world. Maybe they let them take it home. Maybe they have to stay up there and bump some scientists who have to stay for a couple extra months or whatever. So that's, sure, that's all a thing. So, also in F9, and one of my physicist friends' favorite sequences is how do magnets work. And again, this sort of just works however they want it to. In this sequence, this is the side of a truck with huge electromagnets in it. It's driving down the streets of Edinburgh, and all of these things are flying at it. What you don't see in this picture is everyone's underwire from their bras. That would all be there. What you don't see is the emergency room full of people whose pacemakers and glucose monitors have completely gone on the fritz. No, it's just, cell phones, keys, those sorts of things. And then in the next sequence, it works how they need it to. So these two front cars are the Toretto family, and conveniently later, the magnets are all attracted to things 20 feet behind, right? They're attracted to the bad guy's car, not the cars with magnets in it. Okay, sure. However you need it to. Okay. Last but not least, this is the literal cliffhanger of Fast X. And I love this shot because we all had, or our cousins had, Matchbox cars growing up, right? This is basically that chute, right? Back in the 80s when all you had was just the chute. I feel like we understand the physics inherently of what happens to a car in this scenario. It doesn't touch the road necessarily, and then it just shoots off into oblivion wherever it is, never, landing on its tires. No, Dom, it is just a vertical road. So he launches off, not the other way, mind you, which is only a 20-foot drop into like a nice cushy lake. No, this way. And then he's fighting the whole time, waiting for the car to come back on its parabola and hit, the road. Meanwhile, two gas tankers have, of course, crashed into each other right behind him and are spilling liquid gas and explosions and all of that behind him. And his 5-year-old kid is, strapped in the front seat with him. So, short answer. This is not really how this would work. There's a lot of math, again, going on here. And then my favorite part is that halfway down, he needs to go faster. So what does he do? He pushes the NOS button. Because that makes you go faster. It's just another explosion. It's no, Dom, no, don't do it. So anyway, this is the end of movie 10. We don't know what happens, next in movie 11. How they survive, what's going to happen next. Of course, then the dam explodes itself, cracking, all of that. Lots going on. So anyway, I encourage everyone to do a rewatch of Fast and Furious. If you like any STEM topic and non-STEM topics, we talked to a legal expert about all this extradition and how black sites work. We talked to stunt drivers and stuff like that. Check out the podcast, which we call The Facts and the Furious. I also run a Star Warsologies podcast, which is the same sort of questions and expertise, all talking about Star Wars. Thank you very much. I'm a scientist. Ask me anything. Thanks for coming.
All right, so we've got time exactly for maybe 2 questions. The first one's fast. So any questions? In the back.
What about the incredibly impossibly long runway?
Yes. Yes. So in movie 6, they are going on a runway, I think at 150 miles an hour for a solid 13 minutes. Someone thankfully did the math, and it's a 29-mile runway. The longest runway here on planet Earth is 2.5 miles. It's delightful. So there's easy enough math there because they specifically say how fast they're going and all of that, and it's quite ridiculous, right? There's nothing that long. But honestly, because they do it so well in that movie, this is one of the things, I usually notice things and it takes me out of the movie for just a second. I didn't notice that one. I was just this is awesome! And then realized later that, that's a 29-mile runway or something. Yeah?
So not Doc, I think it's Hobbs, and I don't remember what movie, but they're on an ice lake.
Yes.
And he's pulling trucks together.
Yeah.
And at one point he redirects
Oh, missile, right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so Hobbs, aka The Rock. I think it's just The Rock, honestly. It's not even a character. There's a missile coming at him, and because it's skidding on the ice, because a submarine shot it, but just at the surface, so it's going along the ice. And he just puts his foot out the door and is kicks it, and so it blows up the bad guy instead of him. I mean, that kind of makes some sense, right? We can redirect missiles. Things are slippery on ice. My favorite part of that whole sequence is the Ferrari driving on ice. Absolutely not. Yeah, that's a beautiful sequence, though, I have to say.
All right, round of applause.